guys, welcome back to the channel. This is my favourite David Bowie album of all time. How and why? How did I get into this? Let's have a little story time about it. Now, my love affair for David Bowie started in the mid-70s, I'd say, about 76, 77. I'd never heard of him. But you've got to remember, I was about 10 years old. Now, when I was about sort of 8, 9, I started to get into records, music, because my mum and dad gave me like a little record player called High Fidelity. I don't know if you remember them, but they were like a suitcase. It had a plastic lid and it was black and brown. You took the lid off and inside was a record player. And they bought me a record player and they got me some records. They got me Peter and the Wolf, not the David Bowie narrated one. This was Peter Ustinov, I think, narrated this one, and I had that, and I played that and played that and played that. And they used to also get me these albums because they were cheap. I think probably by something like Pickwick, and they were called Top of the Pops. I don't know if you remember them albums, but they weren't the original artists. It was like studio bands, studio artists, and they used to cover songs on it. You know, to have all the latest songs written down the front with this pretty, like, beautiful woman on there, you know, and it was just like not even the proper songs, but I felt like I had them because, oh yeah, look, Mother Kintyre and stuff like this, you know. I just felt really with it. And then we used to go to a social club in Bradby End called British Aerospace, which was attached to the company which my dad worked to. And in one of the bars there, called the Russell Bar, they had a jukebox. And I used to feed it and feed it and feed it with 10p's. Mum, can I have another 10p, another 10p? And I used to go there and play songs and sit there, listen to it. And anyone come to the jukebox, I used to go, that's a good song. That's a good, you know what I mean? Just try and persuade them to put my song on and stuff like that. And sometimes they would. But my mum and dad were really friends with the manager, Danny and Benita there, and we were friends with their children, Sarah and Simon. And I was just really absolutely in love with this jukebox. So much that Danny used to give me some of the records that used to be in there. Because after a while they would change them and take them out, and he used to give me the records. I remember he gave me an ABBA record. He gave me Don't Stop Me Now, Queen. I think they were the first two I got from out of there. He didn't give me Bohemian Rhapsody. He didn't give me any Bowie, but he did give me Ian Dury and the Blockheads, because that's the one I played the most in the sort of later part of the 70s. Because this went on for years, guys. Yeah, I just played that song so much. But anyway, I had these records, so I used to take them home. And I used to play them. I only had about 4 or 5 of them, but I had my Top of the Pops LPs. I had my Peter and the Wolf album. I was absolutely in heaven. I absolutely made up. And that just started my love for music. Back in that day, we used to get pocket money. It wasn't, probably about 50p, which doesn't sound nothing now, but back in the 70s, that was still quite a bit of money. You could still get quite a bit for your 50p. You know, I used to go down and get 10p worth of sweets, and for 40p, I don't know if you remember, your local newsagent used to sell boxes of little soldiers, you know, toy soldiers. You'd have about 12 of them in a box, one laying down, one pointing a gun like that, one like going to throw a hand grenade. There had all these sort of different soldiers. You had green ones. This was the British Army troopers, and you'd have this, you'd have First World War soldiers. I used to buy them and used to set them up and have little games of war, which is bizarre because I am so anti-war. But when you're a little boy, it was like, wow, this is pocket money stuff. But you could also buy magazines, and I used to buy magazines, one called Pop 45. I don't know if you remember that, but it was pretty much just song lyrics. Because I got into music, so I used to watch Top of the Pops, and I used to see certain things that I used to love. Really obscure things. I used to like the more obscure artists that used to come on sometimes. You'd get something like Sailor, or Darts, or Pink Floyd. I hadn't seen Bowie at this point. And so I just got into music, and then I fell in love with all these sort of like wonderful artists. Not in a big way yet, but then I I had one of those top of the pop albums, and there was a song on there called Rebel Rebel. I used to call it Revel Revel because I thought it was about the chocolate. I was 9 or 10. I don't know nothing else. So I used to think, oh, Revel Revel. I love that song. Anyway, it was one day we were down the town, and we're down there with my mum and dad, and I bumped into one of my school friends. It must have been during the week or weekend. I think it was a Saturday. And I saw one of my friends because I had about £1.50 because I hadn't spent any of my pocket money. I kind of saved it because my dad was going to take me to the local toy shop to buy some annuals because I liked annuals. Like you used to get football annuals, Beano Dandy, all these Action Man, and all these sort of annuals. I loved them when I was a kid. So I was going to go down. I bumped into him and talked to him, and he had a little bag with him. Boots bag, and it had like someone singing it. If I can find a picture of it, I'll put it up here. And I said to him, what you got there? What have you been buying? Oh, I bought a record. What? They sell records in Boots? Because I didn't know about record shops, you see. I just thought they were things that are given to you. And I didn't know any different. I thought they sell records in there. And yeah. And I can't remember what he brought. He did show me. Can't remember now what it was. It was something that was like I don't know, something that was popular at the time. Some sort of, I don't know. I have no recognition what he bought, but I said, Dad, go in there, have a look at the records. And my dad wanted to go anyway because my dad was into records. My dad was into jazz, and he was into things like that and some country and western music. And my mum was into sort of British rock, like ELO, things like that, 10cc. And my dad was into Johnny Cash and Louis Armstrong and stuff like that. So great. And Frank Sinatra he loved. So I had a great music life really before I even got into music, because I heard all these wonderful artists, but they weren't mine. But I went in there, and in there they had about 4 or 5 like racks of LPs up and stuff like that. And behind the counter they had the singles charts, like all displayed on the wall, a bit like posters, but like in a line. You'd have the singles. And then I saw on the wall there was David Bowie one, and it was Rebel Rebel. So I thought, and I really liked the cover. I thought, wow, he looks different. He looks cool. I don't know what that's going to be like, but I like it. Rebel Rebel, isn't that the one I got? Is that the one about the chocolates? I thought. Anyway, so I went up and said, can I have that Rebel Rebel by David Bowie? Oh, God, I had no idea. I went, what? She went, oh, do you mean Rebel Rebel? I went, yeah. She goes, oh, and it's David Bowie. All right. I went, okay, I thought it was Bowo. Sorry. Because no, it's David Bowie. Yeah, anyway, so she sold it to me. It was 45p, I think, something like that, which was still quite a bit of money. I thought, that's expensive. I've only got £1 left. But I thought, well, I've got a record. Because my mate's got one, I want one. So I bought Rebel Rebel. Unfortunately, I no longer have it. But if I can find a picture, I'll put it up here as well, which I've probably done. I'm probably pointing at nothing, by the way. But if I do, I'll put it up there. And I bought Rebel Rebel. And then we went to the shop, and I did manage to buy a couple of annuals. My dad gave me a bit extra to top it up so I could get a couple of annuals. I got one about cars and automobiles, and one about football, which I weren't really into. But they were hardback books, and I liked them. So we went home, and I thought, I'm sure this Revel Revel is on my Top of the Pops. So I got my Top of the Pops album out, and I put it on. And I just sort of, I thought, this is pretty cool. Pretty cool. So I'm going to see if it's the same as my new one. So I got my new record out, put it on there, put it on. I thought I was going a bit slow. Then I realised I had it on 33. So then I put it onto 45. I stuck down the stylus onto the record, and then it started. I just thought, this is the song, but this is heavier. And then he started singing. Wow, that was a moment for me, and I just loved his vocal style. It was so different. It was so um, laid back, but so on the game, and so kind of like, yeah, this guy's a absolute sex symbol god. I just thought, wow, this is incredible. I want to be David Bowie. And that was it. I had that single and I played it after school every day. Every day. Rebel, Rebel. And this, I used to go, I went through because I used to keep my magazines, my Look-ins and Pop 45. And I went through them all to find any David Bowie stuff in it. I cut it out, stuck it on my wall, be it lyrics, be it posters, whatever. I did all that and I fell in love with David Bowie. And the rest of the 1970s, up to the 80s, where I also found my second love, which was Gary Newman. And the 80s was David Bowie and Gary Newman were my loves. Yes, I loved other bands. There were loads of other bands I love in the 70s. Japan, David Sylvian, OMD, New Model Army. I had a big love for all these bands, but these were my icons. These what got me through my childhood, my teen years, up to my youth. So they were a massive part of my life. And yeah, so I played that record, and I was saving up. I was saving up to get some more Bowie records. And I managed to get about £1.70 saved with my pocket money, because it's hard when you're young to keep hold of your money, because there's a sweet shop down the bottom there, and there's a new copy of Look-In or something like that. So I used to buy that on occasion. But when I got 170, my mum and dad gifted me another £1. So I had £2.70. So there I was, ready to go and buy my first album. So off I went to town. I thought, I'm going to buy a David Bowie album because I love him. And the David Bowie albums then were about, you could get them for about £2.49, £2.99, £3.99, £4.99 if they were double or something like that. Sometimes it could edge up to about £4 or £5, maybe £6 if they were double, triple album. But most albums were about £3, £3.50, something like that. But I had £2.79. So I went to the Bowie section and I flicked through it. They had them in there, they had Heroes, Low, Ziggy Stardust and all that. And they're all sort of like £3.99. And I just didn't have enough, £3.50. Just didn't have enough. And I thought, So I thought, well, let's have a little look at the singles, see if they've got any more singles, because I just couldn't afford any of the Bowie albums. But right by the main sort of till where they got the singles, on the right hand side was all the singles, on the left was the sale rack. And they had sale albums in there, and I looked through them, flicking through them. They had, some albums in there were even 70p, £1, £1.99, £1.99. They had Hunky Dory in there for £1.99. So I took the album and I just stared at it, turned it over, looked at it, thought, yep, I don't know any of those songs, never heard any of these. I don't know it, but it's David Bowie, I'm buying it. And so I had 70p left, so I looked through, and they had I know, don't laugh, but they had a Leo Sayer album in there for 70p, and I thought, well, Mum and Dad had been listening to Leo Sayer because he was on telly quite a bit. He was quite popular. I thought, I'll grab that. It's 70p. So I've got 2 albums for 70p. It took me a while to get into the Leo Sayer one, but in the end, I ended up quite liking it. I can't remember what it's called now. Thunder in My Heart, I think it was called. I don't no longer have it, but yeah, and I quite liked it. But I had a Bowie album, and it was £1.99. I don't know if it's got a replica in here of the sleeve. No, I don't think it does. But anyway, it was this album, and it was still on the RCA label, like this, in the middle. Sadly, I no longer have it. I don't have it no more. I lost all my vinyls. But anyway, I still have the album. But here we go, and it was just like I took it home. I was trembling, you know. Dad was going back in the car, and I was sitting there going, "Come on, Dad, drive quicker, get quicker." And I got home. I didn't even take my coat off. I just went upstairs, turned my record player, and my mum was like, "Dinner's in half an hour." Oh, yeah. And I just took it out of my bag, my little Boots bag. No, this was FL Moores. I got this from FL Moores. Boots was my Rebel. So I took it out of my FL Moores bag, which was a paper bag. Didn't have plastic in, they were paper bags, and it was wonderful. So I took it out and I kept it in that bag for years. Well, until I sort of like, because I couldn't part of it because it was my first album. And I'm gutted when I lost all my vinyl. It's the one album I really miss the most, was this, because it was my first record I actually purchased. Not the first record well, not say first record I purchased, it was the first album I purchased. The first record I ever bought was Rebel, David Bowie. Like I said, I do have other records that are given to me and gifts and stuff like that. And we'll get to a gift in a bit. And I just put it on, and it started with the piano starting of Changes. And I just thought, wow, this is different to Rebel, because it's earlier. This had it was still rocky, but it had a little bit of a sort of folky feel to it. And I thought, okay, I still like it because it's his voice. His voice was phenomenal. And I sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I concentrated to learn the words. What's he singing about? Who the hell's Andy Warhol and Bob Dylan? I hadn't heard of these people. Obviously, Andy Warhol is an artist, and I've gone on to appreciate his work. Bob Dylan, not so much. Some of his stuff's okay, but Bob Dylan's one of those artists that he's written some brilliant songs, but I prefer other people singing his songs rather than Bob Dylan. But there we are. But back to this, and I just fell in love with this album. So I got to learn this album inside out. I'm not going to talk any more about it because I'm going to do a whole video on Hunky Dory, because this year I'm going to do it celebrating Bowie year, and I want to try and put out one video a month this year about Bowie. So this will be February probably by now, because I think I've done my top 10 Bowie albums in January. Please guys, don't go correcting me on info if I get it wrong on my videos. I'm an old man, I can't remember everything. I've got quite a bit of short memory loss, so please don't try and correct me. Just enjoy my videos, alright? Anyway, fantastic. So a few months down the line, I was ready to go for another Bowie album. I wanted something else that was £1.99, but I couldn't find one for £1.99. But in Boots, now, I don't know if you remember back in the 70s, they used to, EMI used to run a thing called Nice Price. Do you remember that? And they used to do albums in there sometimes for £1.49. And I bought one from the bargain Nice Price rack in Boots for £1.99. And it was Pin-Ups by David Bowie. I thought, wow, he looks so cool there. Who's that hot chick? Is that his wife? I thought, So I bought this, and I just thought, wow, this is really cool. Again, I don't know any of these songs. It turns out it's an album of cover versions. None of these are really Bowie songs. They're all other people's songs. I didn't know this until I heard one of the tracks on there. I said, that sounds like a Beatles song. And I questioned it to my mum and dad. Is that a Beatles song that he's singing? What one was it that's on here? Let me have a quick look. I'm sure there was a Beatles song on here. Don't Bring Me Down. I'm sure that was the Beatles song that he does on here. Let me have a look at this. I'm sure that is Don't Bring Me Down. I'm sure that was the Beatles song, because I'd heard Beatles because of my uncle was well into the Beatles, and I quite liked them at that stage. My love affair with the Beatles hadn't started then. That was my uncle's love. I wanted my own, because I thought my sister was into ABBA. She loved ABBA, and then she got into Culture Club. I got into David Bowie and Gary Newman. Yeah, so I bought this, and this was so weird. I didn't play it a lot because I didn't really like it. Over the years, I've come to love it. There was a couple of tracks on here I loved. I loved Sorrow, and I think I liked I Can't Explain, and I was shocked to find out that was a Who song. And I just thought, wow, this. But I loved the cover, and I was happy with it. So I took this out, and I put that cover on my wall. I sellotaped it, because back in the day we didn't have blue tack. Do you remember? I used to put sellotape like that on each corner onto the wall. I had that on the back of my door on my wall, but I put my record in like that with my records, because it wasn't one that I really played a lot, but I did like the cover. So I brought that, and that was really, really cool. Then I got my little job, didn't I? So now we're getting to sort of like 79, 80. I got my little job, and on my first wages I went and bought 2 David Bowie albums. On my first wage I bought Ziggy Stardust, so The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and The Spiders from Mars. What an album. Again, I'm going to do this entire video on this because this is my second favourite David Bowie album. I was in love with this album, but it started to get a bit scratchy because I played it too much. So I bought this, and this was, wow. This is, to me, this is ultimate. I said, this is the ultimate sound. Although my personal attachment and favourite is this one, this was his ultimate sound, I thought. And I bought this one as well, Low. So they were the 2 that I bought on my first wage. And I just thought, wow. And then when I listened to this, and a lot of it looked quite instrumental, I thought, why isn't he singing? Has he got a bad throat? Or something like that, you know? I wouldn't understand it, you know, artistic credit or merit or anything like that. You didn't think of it back then. You just didn't think of it. And I was like, okay, well, it's still good because I love Breaking Glass. Well, that's a great track. And all is great cool. And then on top of the pops, he comes with a song called Ashes to Ashes. And I thought, this is incredible. Really cool, great song. So I went down to get it in FL Moores, and it wasn't out. So what I'd seen was like a preview of it. They'd done like a preview. This is a new single coming out, whatever it was, because it's not out yet. But he has got a new single out, which is Up the Hill Backwards. So I brought that, and I loved it. Oh my God, Up the Hill Backwards, I thought it was even better than Ashes to Ashes. It was so different. That sort of doom, 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 that drumming, it just went, wow. And it almost felt like it was going backwards, the sound. It was like so futuristic, and then his voice was sort of melody harmonized, and it just sounded really different. I thought, this is incredible. How can this guy be just such a genius? Everything he touches is immensely amazing. So I just bought it, and then Ashes to Ashes come out, and I bought it, and then I bought the album. This was the first album I bought on release day. Was Scary Monster Super Creep. So when I found out when this was coming out, I went out and I bought this on vinyl, and it was the first album I bought on release day. And I think the same year, Christmas that year, on my birthday, my parents bought me this, which is the only remaining Bowie album I have on vinyl. I've lost all my other Bowie albums. Look how tatty it looks now. But this I like. Because you know why? Because it tells a history. There's history in this album. I played this more than the other albums, mostly because it had all the songs that I loved on it at the time, including my first Bowie record, Revel Revel. So it was so special, and my mum and dad bought it for me. And when I remember, right, yeah, this is the one. And it had all these pictures on there, and I used to sit there thinking, I've got that, I've got that, I'm gonna get this one next. Oh, I've got that. Oh, he's got a concert out. Oh my God, there's a concert album. That's from that film. I thought, is that the soundtrack to the film? Because I remembered he'd been in a film, because I managed to see the film, The Man Who Fell to Earth. And I thought, that picture's from there when he goes in that spaceship. And I didn't know Station to Station was just an album, but they used a picture. I thought it was the soundtrack. And then I couldn't believe my eyes. Down there, he narrated Peter and the Wolf. I thought, I checked my record and it wasn't. It was Peter Ustinov that did mine. And here it is, guys. My original Bowie album that my parents bought me back in the very early 80s. How cool is that? That's just so cool. I love this so much. Do you know what I'm going to do with this? I think I'm going to give this to my son. Because he's just got into vinyl. So I'm going to hand this down and its story to my son. I'll go through the track listing on this. It's got Space Oddity, What a Way to Open, John I'm Only Dancing, Changes, Ziggy Stardust, Suffragette City, Gene Genie, Diamond Dogs, Rebel Rebel, Young Americans, what a track, Fame, which is the song he'd done with John Lennon, and it ends with Golden Years. What an incredible album, eh? You can sit there and you will be able to go through the melody of each song yourself, wouldn't you? That's how incredible David was. I love him, man. I just love him. It's just so cool. So that's it, really. So then my love affair went on, and I went on to buy other Bowie albums. You name it, Aladdin Sane, Heroes, you know, and I just went on. And then at my local cinema, which was, I believe it was an ABC there in Stevenage then, came a film, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, in the 80s. This came out not long after he'd done the Let's Dance album. I bought that Let's Dance album, which was a really good album, probably his last good album for a few years. Because he did Tonight and the one after that, let me down whatever it's called, but I didn't really like them albums at all. The Tin Machine stuff I quite liked. And it took a while for Bowie to get back up, I think, to his former self. We're going to more of that in another video, but yeah, this film came on at the cinema, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, starring David Bowie and Rishi Sakamoto. Now, I know Rishi Sakamoto because I was a huge David Sylvian fan, and he'd done some work with him, and he'd done the soundtrack. And David Sylvian did a track, Forbidden Colours, which wasn't actually used in the film, but they did the instrumental, the theme tune. They put David's lyrics on it and released it as a single. And it also got Tom Conti in it. I've seen him on TV before. So I went to see this at the cinema. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days in a row I went. When I finished that week, I could know it off by heart. Then I took my mum to see it. I paid for my mum to see it, because don't forget I was working then. I took my mum to see it on my 7th viewing. And I went because Bowie was in it, you know. And it was just so cool. And David Sylvian had sung the song, the theme tune. That's where my love affair with David Bowie, you know, that's when my obsession began with David Bowie. But my love affair started with this. Cheers, guys.